Oswego's 2010 Redistricting Committee. She's going to be presenting valuable information on who the Redistricting Committee is, why is redistricting important, when and where the Commission will receive public input, and more. So thank you so much for coming. I understand, I also sit on the planning board, and I understand that we invited them to, I know we invited them because I was the one who invited them last week to come to the community council to see, and instead they opted to have you come. So I'm sorry you have to come twice to the community to say the same thing. We really were hoping that we could work together and just have them come.
Any chance to get out of my office downtown is fantastic.
So, but we did try so that you wouldn't have to come twice to read the exact same report. So.
Well, and thank you, Robin and Guy, especially for extending the invitation to me this evening. And I want to thank all of you for the gift of your time this evening and the opportunity to tell you a little bit about what we're doing at the Redistricting Commission. I did have a PowerPoint, but I was a little bit technologically challenged, so I was locked out of the computer. But I do have copies of my slides and a couple of other handouts that hopefully all of you got. So I'm just going to give you a pretty brief who, what, where, when, and why of local redistricting. And I should also note that I'm joined this evening by one of our commissioners, Mr. Arthur Nishioka. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for coming.
So the first slide, the when. Redistricting is actually happening in every jurisdiction right now. We already heard that it's happening at the county, but it happens at the congressional level, at the state legislature, and both sides of the house. It's also happening at the county, the city, and also school districts and community college districts. What makes ours a little bit different is that our process is governed by an independent commission, and it happens every 10 years when the census data comes out. So what this means is the power has been vested in a group of 7 commissioners who are appointed, and they as a body have the sole exclusive authority to conduct and approve this process. This is the second time this process has been done by an independent citizens commission, and this was a result of a change, an amendment to the city charter that was passed in 1992 by a vote of the people in an effort to depoliticize the process and make it more impartial, because in all other jurisdictions, this process is vested in the elected officials themselves. So the when is, per the city charter, we're redistricted every 10 years, and we have to adopt our final plan no later than 9 months after we receive the federal decennial census data. The census data was released a couple of weeks ago, so now we have actually shorter than 9 months to do it, which I'll get into on the next slides. So why do we do it? Very basically, the core principle of redistricting is to account for population changes, which is why it's synced up with the release of the census data. So we're able to see how much communities have grown over the past 10 years. And the idea is to make each district as equal in population as possible or practicable, and those are 2 different legal terms that appear in different places in the city charter. It's also to ensure equal access to political representation so that each person has 1 person, 1 vote. And redistricting can really affect communities' ability to elect representatives of their choice. It's something that affects every single person who lives in our city. This time around, we're facing some kind of unique challenges. The first is that we are adding a new 9th council seat to the city council, and this is in result to another vote of the people last June, which approved Prop D, which transitioned us permanently to the strong mayor form of government. What that means is the mayor is no longer a voting member of the city council. He's now permanently the chief executive of the city. So he acts much like a hired city manager would, running the day-to-day affairs of the city. As a result, we need to add a new 9th seat in order to break any ties with the city council. And this is the first time a new seat has been added since 1965. Additionally, we're under some kind of unique time constraints. As I mentioned in my last slide, we would generally have about 9 months to complete this process, but the registrar of voters at the county needs adequate time to input the new map into their system. So as a result, they've given us a deadline of this August, where we would generally have until about December to complete all of this work. So the who, as I mentioned, we have a 2010 Redistricting Commission. It's made up of 7 residents throughout the city of San Diego, and they, as the body, have the sole exclusive authority to adopt the redistricting plan. But what we want to do is get out into the communities as much as possible to maximize your input, really reduce the layers of bureaucracy so that you can come straight to us and tell us what you're thinking. It's also important to note that as a city commission, we're completely independent and separate from the city. We do rely somewhat on city staff to help us, but we are unlike the County Redistricting Advisory Committee in that we end up adopting the final plan and voting on it. It doesn't go to the mayor or the city council. So the what? The commission is going to be working on a couple of different things. First is a preliminary redistricting plan, developed kind of our first cut at everything. That's developed after we go out and do a pre-map phase of hearings and testimony, which is what we're doing right now. Then we also adopt a final redistricting plan after developing a preliminary plan. And this includes a filing statement, which is really a legal document with evidentiary basis that explains the reasons why the commission made all the decisions that they did. So it's really more than a map, it's actually a legal document that has to be defended. It is approved by a vote of 5 to 7 of the commissioners, and as I mentioned, it doesn't go to the council or the mayor for their approval. Legal requirements. There are actually many, many legal requirements that govern how we complete this process, and they're in the Constitution, the City Charter, the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965, and other related case law statutes that happen every 10 years when this process happens. The City Attorney's Office has been providing legal training in our commission meetings, and those videos and PowerPoints are archived on our website for anyone who's interested in sort of the legal workings of how this process takes place. But very basically, I'm going to just touch on some of the city charter requirements that we have to follow. We'll have to create 9 districts that are composed of whole census units, and each district has to contain as close to 1/9 of the city's population as possible or practicable. And you'll note on this page that I've put the number. The goal is 145,267 people per district. Later on in your packet after the slides, I have included some census data that shows kind of the total city population and then broken down by council district a couple of different ways. So where that 145,267 number comes from is we now know the city of San Diego has a total population of 1,307,402 people. You divide that by 9, you get 145,267, and that's our goal. The goal is the least deviation possible from that number.
The deviation is roughly 10% of that? From the
The
worst,
standard?
from the minimum to the max?
Yes, deviation is measured between the largest district and the smallest district. And last time around that this happened, there was a standard of about 10%, but since that time, courts have been tightening it up, so we want to strive for as little as possible. 0 would be ideal. Another important note is that we cannot redraw the districts for the purpose of advantaging incumbents. So if an incumbent happens to be drawn out of their seat, then there's nothing to do about it. Another set of requirements that we have to follow, again, kind of the core principle is equalizing population, but we also look at things like compactness and contiguity. So if you think of a circle as the most compact geographic shape, obviously our districts don't look like that, but we do look at statistical measures of how each district looks. They also need to have reasonable access between population centers. We don't want to end up with districts that are connected by one single street or a single channel, and they need to be bounded by natural boundaries, such as other geographic things like mountains and bays. And then we also look at things preserving identifiable communities of interest, and this has been a term that has gotten a lot of attention recently because it's a little vague, and what constitutes an interest is varied. There's no one single definition. It can be anything from a shared economic interest, shared health conditions, shared lifestyle patterns, common desires and goals. And this is where your testimony is really important to the commission, because while we primarily rely on census data to help us with things like population equalization, there are certain things we can't glean from data, and that's where your input is really important to what we're doing. So what we'll be doing is gathering your input through a series of hearings. Some of our key milestones, as I mentioned, the census data has been released. We had our 2 introductory public hearings this past Monday and Tuesday, which was really for the commission to get out of their meeting space downtown, out into the community, to just let folks know that we're here and what we're doing and on what timeline. We're now entering into the pre-map phase, so we'll be having 9 public hearings between now and the early part of May to take your official testimony of what you think the redistricting plan should look like. In May and June, we'll develop a preliminary plan, and once we file it, we have 30 days to go back out and hold another round of hearings to take reactions and input, make final refinements to adopt the final plan hopefully in August, and then file our final report and close our office in the fall. So community engagement, this is sort of the how and where we're trying to get input. We do have our regular meetings twice a month downtown at City Hall. Those are broadcast on City TV if you can't attend, and all of our meetings are archived, so you can watch them at any time. If you're interested